Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. So I'd like to remind you each and every day, it expands our base. What a confusing time we live in. Let's begin with the fact that there are or there are not negotiations taking place between the United States and Iran. We don't know. All we know is that Donald Trump says, yes, negotiations are proceeding, and the Iranians are caving, and the Iranians are saying, no, there are no negotiations. We have nothing to say to you. And, well, where does that leave us? This morning, the President of the United States, using the full power of the presidency, threatened Iran again with bombing, with obliteration, particularly of their oil production facilities and whatever remains of their nuclear facilities. And yet, the Iranians seem unwilling to proceed to some sort of a deal. And what is the deal? The president says the government of Iran has changed. No, it hasn't. The Israelis have taken out leadership, but the basic government of Iran remains in place. Who is Donald Trump negotiating with? Or is he simply negotiating with himself? This is a fascinating moment. With thousands of U.S. troops now in the Middle East, with America poised to attack, there is no question that we are on a precipice, and we don't know which way it's going to go. But we do know it all depends on one person, and that is Donald Trump. This weekend, No Kings rallies took place in thousands of locations across the United States and the world. And we know that here in the United States, the numbers are somewhat suspect, perhaps, but between 7 and 8 million people turned out to protest Donald Trump. They were nonviolent. It was peaceful. And it was dramatic. Clearly, the President of the United States and his popularity are suffering. And yet, let's be clear, for Donald Trump, it doesn't really matter. He will be president until his term expires, unless something intervenes. And that doesn't seem likely. We know that a record number of Republicans are retiring from the Congress. And why are they retiring? Because they understand that the odds are that in January next, the Democrats will control the House and maybe the Senate. And that would be a terrible blow to Donald Trump. But we have a long way to go before that happens. And in the meantime, the Republican Congress seems to be rolling over and doing nothing. And that, my friends, does not augur well for Republicans. Look, it's a very simple proposition. Are we at war? The answer is, I don't know. There hasn't been a declaration of war. Has Congress looked into the question of what's happening? The answer is no. There has been no congressional hearing, no outspoken statement by leaders of the Congress on the Republican side. And so we are left adrift. What we do know is this president is willing to exercise unilaterally tremendous presidential power. Let me give you an example. Why has there been the turbulence at the airports here in the United States? The answer is because TSA workers are not being paid, and Congress was not prepared to appropriate the money. So, what happens? Donald Trump issues an executive order. Now, stop for a minute and think. If an executive order really mattered, Donald Trump could have issued the executive order at the beginning of this airport crisis, but he didn't. And now the question is his executive order valid? Now, he has ordered the Department of Homeland Security to pay salaries. Does anybody know where that money's coming from? Oh, wait. We are told it's coming from that great, big, beautiful bill. Do you see a line item in there which allows for this kind of activity? What I think is critical to understand is this president has resolved to go around Congress on every level. He is acting unilaterally. And the idea that a president of the United States can use executive orders in order to achieve his end is profoundly disturbing. Why was it called a no king rally? Because a president of the United States should theoretically be cooperating with Congress. And this president clearly is not. Donald Trump is stretching the Constitution. Let me remind you that the Supreme Court ruled that he could not unilaterally impose tariffs. Will the Supreme Court now step in and say that the President of the United States does not have the authority to order funds to be paid that have not been authorized? Can a president rule by executive order? And the answer is, in America, the answer should be no. But that is not the current reality. Let's be clear. Whether it has to do with war, whether it has to do with what is happening in America's airports with the TSA, whether it is the nature of a president being able to act unilaterally, that is exactly why we don't have a king. What is really disturbing to me is the passivity of Congress. And yes, the passivity of Republicans. They would be outraged if a Barack Obama or a Joe Biden had acted in this fashion. There would have been calls for impeachment by the House, conviction by the Senate. And yet, what do we hear from Republicans today? Crickets. Crickets. And the person who I think is the most deplorable is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Speaker Johnson will do nothing to disrupt his relationship with Donald Trump. And Republicans are going to pay the price. Speaker Johnson knows that the gig is almost up. I want to turn your attention for just a moment to another domestic issue, and that is the election which is about to take place in November. Will it be a fair election? Will Donald Trump attempt to intervene in the election? Tom Homan yesterday was asked directly the question, will his forces be placed in position to monitor elections? And Homan says absolutely not. He has received no order to that effect. But we all understand that the American electoral process is under siege by this administration. So when we look at the domestic concerns, which are growing on a daily basis, we'd better understand the impact as it relates not only to domestic policy, but to foreign policy. We have said in the past that when it comes to foreign policy, a president is king. That's why we have a No King's Day. That is why millions of Americans went into the streets peacefully, to protest what this president and this administration are doing. I want to say a word about the Middle East itself. we face a serious crisis. Our ally, Israel, has done the heavy lifting in terms of getting rid of the Iranian leadership, and they have been remarkably successful in their endeavor. But there is a simple reality. Our other allies are questioning what in the world is going on. And let us turn now to the Strait of Hormuz. This morning, Donald Trump threatened to open the strait, to seize the island from which all of this oil emerges. There is no doubt that the Americans are now in a position to act. But what does it mean? Remember that with the Strait of Hormuz, we are talking about 20% of the world's oil supply passing through that strait. Donald Trump says the United States is not affected, as if that were something to be proud of. Of course we're affected. The oil markets around the world are all integrated. And although the president claims tremendous oil independence, energy independence, one really wonders what that means. Just take a look at the price of gasoline at the gas pump. There are contradictions coming out of this administration that are overwhelming and very disturbing. And yet, there is another issue which needs to be addressed this morning. It appears that the Supreme Court is on the verge of issuing a verdict on birthright citizenship, the 14th Amendment. And I've listened to many arguments on all sides about this question. But if the Supreme Court is true to American law and the Constitution, it seems to me that the court can only render one verdict: upholding birthright citizenship. What we now know about the United States of America is that our democracy is fragile. It hinges on the Congress, on the judiciary, and on the executive. 3 co-equal branches of government. And whether or not those 3 co-equal branches of government will continue to balance the nature of American democracy. These are serious questions which need to be addressed. And we are going to...
Every day, the world gets a little weirder and a lot more awesome. Cool Stuff Daily takes a look at everything from mining in space to the latest in the fight against cancer to how AI is, basically changing everything. It's all the cool stuff you didn't know you needed to know. Join us for Cool Stuff Daily as we take a quick look at science, tech, and the wait, what stories that make you sound way smarter at dinner. Subscribe to Cool Stuff Daily now, because the future's happening fast, and it's way too fun to miss.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.